Okay, so this week I got started on another star quilt. So I'm using this pattern again for the block, except for my change up. And there's my notes for this one. This one is going to have 30 blue stars and then white background on the stars and white sashing and then blue cornerstones again. So I have all of the middles cut. These are not going to match. So the middle, like I did with the last one, the middles are going to be different from the points, but all the points will be the same. So I have these in stacks of 5. So I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I've got all of those cut. I'm pretty sure I have all of these cut if I counted right. I have a bunch of these. I think I have all of these cornerstones cut, and then I need 120 of these white squares and 120 of these white rectangles. I don't know how many I have. I just cut till I ran out of small scraps. I'll get those sewn, not these, but I'll get these sewn, and then I will see how many more of these I need, and then I'll start working on these and I'll see how many more of those I need. I was using up whatever small white scraps I could find to get these cut. So I'm actually going to start sewing. So these go on here. I'll show you some progress along the way. But I did finish a quilt top this week and I got the back done. Tomorrow I'll probably do the sandwich. I figured this was a good thing to work in between when I don't really have enough time to work on a big project for an amount of time that's going to take concentration, because these take no concentration. So I'm going to get going on these. Blue and white star quilt. Stars are going to finish at 8 inches. Sashing cut at 2.5 inches. Yeah, there's all my math and all my computations. So I'm going to get started on these and we'll see how far I get today. It's already 4:30, so I'm probably not going to sew very long today. All right, I have all of these done except for the last 5. So I'm going to walk you through these. I'll take these all the way from start to finish to finished block. So from these squares to finished block, and then I'll finish up the rest. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this set of 8, and I am going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pull 4 of them out. I'm going to set the other 4 aside. Right there. And then I'm going to take them and I'm going to go, and I'm going to do this with all the sets I have here. So I like to do this side first. And I'm just going to put it in this side here. I'm going to make sure these corners are even and the sides are even. And I'm going to stitch from here to this corner. I have 1/4 inch seam tape here. I just make sure that the bottom corner is on the red here. And I go. Don't ever start at this corner because it'll crinkle it up. It'll catch and it won't start right. But if you start on the side here, it'll push it right straight through. So I'm just going to put that to there. I'm going to make sure this is on the corner. I'm going to make sure they're still lined up because sometimes they switch. I'm going to hold my tails and we're off. Now there's 4 for each color and I have 5 colors here. So I've got 20 of these to do. And I'm just going to do them one right after the other. I'm going to do all 4 of these. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. See, this one shifted. Just going to push it back. Make sure it's lined up. Now, if you don't have the seam tape and you don't feel confident doing this, you can always take a pencil or a washable marker, or I like to use the friction pens, and you can just draw from corner to corner of the line. And I'm not going to worry about this here because that's actually going to be trimmed off. I had a couple that were nicked at the edges here, and I knew I was going to be cutting them off, so I didn't even worry about it. I left it in there. So you could draw a line here and then sew on that line. Again, I had a slightly frayed edge, so I turned it to the outside where it's going to be trimmed off. All right, on to the next color. I'm going to take 4 off the top. Put the other 4 away. And a couple of these, it was funny, they had 10 in them instead of 8 when I first started. I just miscounted. And I'm going to go all the way through these, and then I'm going to show you what happens next. Okay, now I'm just going to pull all these apart. Okay, so now they're in the same order that they are here. Grab my garbage can. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I just do it right over the garbage can. So now I'm going to use my scissors. You could use your ruler and be exactly 1/4 of an inch. I find if it's a little more than 1/4 of an inch, it's easier to press them. So I'm just going to cut them with my scissors real quick like that. Okay, so here we are at the ironing board. I'll wake up my iron. It went to sleep. So just pressing them. I'm going to press them open. So what I like to do is give them a top press to set the seam, and then I push the dark this way, and I'll do this with the iron actually, and then I flip it and I pull this open and I press it down. So I'm going to do that with all of these, and there are 20 of them. Then I'll give it a flip over and press the top. And that's half my flying geese. Well, half of a flying goose. And this is the reason, a good portion of the reason why I did them in groups of 5. If I would have done all of them at once, that would have been 30 by 4. That would have been 120 of these to press all at one time. And to me, that just seems like a lot of standing here and pressing. The ironing board gets hot, the iron gets hot, the pieces of fabric get hot, my fingers get hot, burned, whatever. If I just do a few, I can switch back and forth on spots on the iron, and it's not so bad, and I'm not standing here for as long. So that's how I like to do it. I like to break it up. It would probably be quicker to do all of the sewing and then all of the ironing and then all of the sewing and then all of the ironing. But this is how I like to do it. This is for fun, not speed. So this is how I do it. Okay, that's all of them. Now we are going to go back to the sewing machine. I kept them in order. I did turn them as I went just so that I can see the the dividing between them, but they are in the same order as they are in my stack from when I sewed them the first time. So now I'm going to go back to the sewing machine, and we're going to do the exact opposite of what we did the last time. We're going to sew from this corner to this corner, and then when we trim them, they're going to go back like that, and we're going to have flying geese. So back to the sewing machine. Take you with me. Okay, so these are all stitched and pressed, and the next step is I will set 2 aside, and then I will sew, sorry, I had to think for a second. I will sew these whites on either end, like that. And then I'll go back around and I'll sew the whites on the other side. And then with the 2 that I set aside, sorry, the AC is going behind me and it keeps blowing my pieces. With the 2 that I set aside, I will sew one side chain piecing. I'll go through all 5 of them, and then I'll sew the other side chain piecing. And this is where we'll be at then. We'll be here and here and here. These will be sewn, these will be sewn, and I'll have one of these on the bottom too. And these will be in rows, and I'll be ready to put my rows together. So I'm going to the sewing machine. Okay, so the next step, now that these are all sewn, is I'm going to press these seams to the outside, and then I'm going to press, oop, that one goes over there. And then I'm going to press these seams toward the inside. And there's two reasons for that. One, it's easier to not try to bend this piece or these pieces. They would be much happier staying straight, so going to this side. And two, that way when I go to put them together, they're going to nest. So, because these will be, and I know these don't match right this second, but these will be to the outside, these will be to the inside, and they'll nest together. So that's what I'm doing now. Sure, you don't need to watch that. Sure, you can figure out how to do that. Okay, and I'm actually going to move these out of the way because I have other ones that are already finished that I can show you. So the next step that I'll do with these 5 is I'm going to put these together. So these are already sewn and pressed. Let's see if I can move this camera up just a little bit. You can see a little better. Okay, so these are sewn and pressed already. I have 25 of them actually finished. And then, because I was organized and I kept them together, these are going to go like this. So I'm just going to sew, obviously, I'm going to flip this like that and this like that, and see how they're going to nest. These seams are going to nest just perfectly like that. See? So that's what I'm going to do after I finish pressing those. I'm going to start sewing, and I will sew all 30 of them when I sit down to sew again. Okay, so all my blocks are done, and I have been trimming them, and I thought, you know, I should probably talk about this. So I have almost all of them trimmed. I have 1, 2, 3 left. So in a perfect world, these would have come out to 8.5 inches. And you can see some of them are a little wonky. Like they're just not quite lined up right. And these ones are not bad. Some of them were a lot worse. So I took a couple that were really bad and I measured them, and the biggest I could get out of that was 8.5 inches. So I am just squaring them up to 8.5 inches now. So I do have a much bigger square than I need. I do have an 8 or 8.25. 8.25 is the biggest I can get out of them. So I do have an 8.5 square, but I couldn't find it. So we're using the big one. So basically what I'm doing is I am lining this diagonal up with this corner and this corner. And then I'm shifting it just a little bit to where every edge is either here even or with the 8.25 if I can. Now this one's not going to be perfect with the center lined up like that, but I am going to shift it a little bit. So this is at 8.25. This top edge is mostly at the edge. There's a little dip in there. This is within the 8.25. This is very close. The corner might not be quite 8.25, and this is just barely in. So that's where I'm going to cut. I'm just going to cut right here. And I noticed, I think I need a new blade, but too lazy to go change it right now. I'm going to go across the top and even that up. And then I'm going to flip it. I'm going to put this down at the bottom. Now, I do have a rotating mat here, but it's just easier since I'm on the ironing board to flip it. And if you didn't have a rotating mat, that's what you would have to do. So now I'm taking and I'm lining this edge and this edge up with the 8.25, and I'm trimming whatever is sticking out. And there's nothing sticking out on the top. I knew that was going to be very close. It'll all work out. In a perfect world, these would have been 8.5. I don't live in a perfect world, and I like to go by the adage of done is better than perfect. So these have all been pressed and starched. I starched them too. It just makes it easier to work with them once they're a little stiffer. So again, on this next one, I'm going to line this up the best I can, and then hopefully I can shift it a little bit and get everything within the 8 1/4 or the edges. And this one is going to work out that way, just barely. Let me go a little bit farther. So this one is going to work out that way. I still have it squared on this square. And again, that last one was off by such a tiny bit that in the quilt, nobody will notice. And B, you know what? They're never perfect. Seriously. It'll be finished. It's for me anyway, so I will love it. Or maybe I should say it's for Salty because he was the one that wanted another star one. And then I've got just a little bit out here and a little bit out here, and I'm hoping you can see that on the camera. I can't get the camera in any... Oh, you know what? Let me see if I can zoom it for the last one, because I can't get it any closer and still be able to work. Because the camera will be in the tripod will be in my way. Let me see if I can zoom. Let's see what happens if I do this. Yeah, you might be able to see a little better. Give it an adjustment here. There we go. Okay, so last one. And again, I'm not using the grid on the... I could, but I'm not. That's just way too much for me. I need to be able to see the grid. So again, where's my... Got the 1 inch up here. I'm lining up this corner with this corner across here. And then I'm just going to scoot it until everything is inside the 8 1/4 or the edge of the square. There we go. So I'm just trimming off a little bit here. That's it. That tiny little bit. And a little bit here. Just barely. I don't even know if I'll be able to pick all that up. That's it. That's all I trimmed. And then I'm going to turn it. I'm going to line this edge and this edge up with the 8 1/4. That edge is off with just a hair. And that'll be okay. It'll never show in the end of the quilt. Trim that. And that. That's it. That is all I trimmed off of that block. And just to show you real quick where it was off. So it was off here just a hair. I'll line it up with here and here when I put the strip on, and that little bit will never be a problem. So that was the last one trimming. I do need to go cut my strips to go in between, and we'll be back when we're ready to sew. Whoop. I believe I have enough corner squares cut. I think that's enough. I haven't counted them. I'll know when I start putting it together. And then I got all of the sashing strips cut. So these are going to go between all the blocks, and then with the cornerstones at each corner of each block, and then even around the outside sashing, I will do that. I might put a border on after. I might just piece together a bunch of different blues to make a border. I'm not sure yet, but those are cut and ready to sew. All right, hi there. This quilt top is finished. A couple little stories for you. So as some of you have heard me say before, I am not technologically proficient. So I was deleting a bunch of older videos from my phone because I record on my phone, and I accidentally deleted all of the footage for this quilt. Luckily, Salty is very technologically proficient. We'll just call him my technological guru, magician, whatever. And he was able to retrieve a whole bunch of the footage, which is what you just saw. So then I came out here to do this video, and I did the whole video, and I hadn't turned my mic on, so there was video, but there was no sound. So this is take 2, and we're going to talk about this. So up to the point where these stars were finished, you've seen. So the way I put together these blocks was I had the star block, and then I added on this piece here, and then I took these corners and I added them to a side piece, and then I put that on as the next piece. Then for the ones that were on the bottom, for the 5 that were on the bottom, I added another one of these to the bottom like this. And then for the ones that were on this side, I added another one over here. And then on the bottom one, it had all the way around on the bottom corner here. So that's how I put this together. And hopefully if I do another star one like this, I will show you all of that. I can't remember if I showed you on the black and colorful one. So I tried to put this together totally random. And in the world of random, and Salty always says this to me, he goes, well, that's random. These 2 center blocks are the same. I didn't have very many repeats on the center blocks. That might be the only one. And I just happened to wind up getting them next to each other. And I used them because they had the yellow. I wanted a few more little pops of yellow. And, you know, I've got this yellow one over here. And I threw these in because they had a little more yellow. So in the world of randomness, these 2 are together. I tried to make sure that the centers and the outsides weren't flipped. So like this center and this outside wouldn't be flipped for this to be the center and this to be the outside. However, on this block, and you can't quite see it, but it's there, this block and this block are flipped. How that happened, I have no idea. I tried very hard not to make that happen, And then, you know, these 2 on the same block. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. Again, in the world of randomness, Salty says there are things that work out that just don't work out random. So this quilt top is finished. I am going to do a pieced backing from the rest of the blues that I have. That'll be in the next video. The quilt sandwich, the quilting, and the binding will be in the next video. So this video is finished. This top is finished. Thanks so much for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.